Good morning. It's April 1st, 2022. Welcome to Triggered. I'm Cory Morgan. Happy carbon tax increase day. If you hadn't noticed, in Alberta, actually, we reduced some gasoline taxes, so your price went down a little bit at the pump today. But for most of Canada, it went up. And of course, ours would have gone down further had we not had Justin Trudeau's carbon tax slapping us in the face today. But hey, we got to save the world. Apparently, it comes at a big price. It's also April Fool's Day. But unfortunately, that tax increase is all too real, and it's going to impact fertilizer, foodstuffs, distribution, everything. When you tax energy, you put a price on everything. So we're starting April with a poor beginning, but maybe we'll get better as the month goes along. So it's that reminder to everybody: this is a live show. Comments are welcome. By all means, bring them in. Let's talk back and forth. We got Pamela from Monty Lake, BC, Kathy, Scott, all you guys jumping in there. I like to see that interaction. That makes the difference. Makes why we don't do these recorded like so many other shows. Having that going on the fly sort of thing, and possibly bringing in some commentary from viewers and guests is just helps make the show more lively. Of course, we get the odd technical issue, and then we just got to run with it as well. But hey, at least you never know what you're necessarily going to get. Either do I, which helps keep me gray while I'm going. So let's see what today's guests. We've got Dr. Dennis Modry from the Alberta Prosperity Project. He's going to be on and explaining what that is. We've had a number of commenters actually saying, bring him on. And, they want to hear more about this Alberta Prosperity Project. So, of course, we reached out, and Dr. Modry is going to come on and talk to me today about that. And after that, Conservative Party of Canada leadership candidate Roman Baber. You might remember him. He was an Ontario member of provincial parliament. He got kicked out of caucus, Doug Ford's caucus, because he was too outspoken against the mandates and things. Now he's running for the leadership of the federal party, and we'll see how that's been going for him. So let's get on to what's got me going today. I'm going to say some good news and give some kudos for a change. Yeah, it's not an April Fool's thing. Jason Kenney's UCP government got one right with Bill 15. It's a much-needed piece of legislation, and I got to commend them for their courage to put it forth. Many prior governments have been too cowardly to take on public service unions, and it's led us into the mess we're enjoying today. Now, the Alberta Teachers Union is on the warpath, of course, over this. They're indignant, outraged, and spitting righteous ire. The union head, Jason Schilling, has called Bill 15 a vindictive piece of legislation designed to punish the Alberta Teachers Union. Now, before I get on to what Bill 15 is, let's break down what the Alberta Teachers Union is. They call themselves the Alberta Teachers Association. Well, let's not beat around the bush. They are a union. The Alberta Teachers Association takes mandatory dues from teachers, does collective bargaining on behalf of teachers, and has the ability to initiate labor actions, including strikes. That makes the Alberta Teachers Association a trade union by every definition. The fact that they hide from that definition illustrates the disingenuous nature of their organization. The authority and the reach of the Alberta Teachers Union is far too wide. They've been acting under multiple guises, and now it's has been for quite some time, puts the safety of students at risk. The union pretends to be little more than a governing body for the profession of teaching, much like any other professional organizations and associations, but it's not. It's through that role, though, that the union has assumed responsibility for the investigation and adjudication of teacher misconduct. Now, as a union, the Alberta Teachers Association can't effectively act as the organization in charge of teacher discipline. It's an obvious conflict of interest, at least obvious to anybody outside from a teachers union advocate. So the UCP's Bill 15 is going to take the role of investigation and adjudication of teachers' misconduct out of the hands of the union. It'll go into an independent body to investigate and look into any allegations of misconduct on the part of teachers. Of course, the union's gone nuts. There have been numerous cases, though, of serious teacher misconduct, earning weak disciplinary follow-up in hearings conducted by the teachers union. Over the years, provincial education ministers have repeatedly had to actually intervene and impose stronger sanctions in the case of teacher misconduct. Due to a class action lawsuit filed against the Calgary Board of Education on behalf of students allegedly sexually assaulted by teacher Michael Gregory, the Alberta Teachers Union and their conflict of interest in disciplinary issues was really brought into the spotlight. The teachers union investigated the actions of Gregory, concluded that he had assaulted students, and they recommended a suspension of his teaching certificate. Naughty Mr. Gregory. Despite being aware of the criminal nature, though, of Gregory's actions, the union chose not to report it to the police. When they were asked about it, union representative Jonathan Teitmeyer said, The union's not under any obligation to report potential criminal behavior of teachers to the police. Citizens were aghast. Like, don't these guys have any sense of responsibility towards the safety of the children? Do they really need it laid out in written terms why it might be important to report knowledge of potential child sex abuse to police? The teachers union feels that they shouldn't have to. I mean, that shows how disconnected they are and where their role is. Now, the head of the teachers union, Jason Schilling, he made this galling statement in the case of Michael Gregory. He said, "As a result of our processes, this teacher was removed from the profession and never taught again." Okay, this is true. Gregory never did teach again. He had a short suspension, didn't come back to teaching, but furthermore, he committed suicide a while ago. Schilling neglected to mention that part. So, I mean, because Gregory was criminally charged with sexually assaulting the students. Once the police finally found out, no thanks to the union, they charged him and he killed himself. But for Schilling to take effort or take credit for ending the teaching career of the man who ended it through suicide, that's pretty vile. The teaching profession is going to lose nothing in having the union removed from its role as a disciplinary body. If anything, Albertans are going to feel more comfortable entrusting their children to public schools in the knowledge that an independent body is going to be looking out for the safety of their children rather than a self-serving union. Trust in the entire profession will grow. The only teachers who would be upset with the teachers union not running disciplinary hearings are teachers who fear they might actually be facing one of those disciplinary hearings. The union's furious about losing authority in an area that they never should have had authority in the first place. When it comes to disciplinary actions, the Alberta Teachers Union has consistently put the interests of teachers ahead of those of students. This puts students in danger, and the practice has to stop. I mean, how could it not put the teachers' interests first? It's a union. That's what they do. Let's go farther back to show how this has been going on. In 2014, Education Minister Jeff Johnson was forced to overturn 20% of the cases that came before him during his term. And here's 3 of the cases that Minister Johnson overruled the union recommendations and imposed a lifetime ban for the teachers involved. The teachers union recommended a 2-year suspension for Darcy Robert Steele, who'd been found to have yelled at, kicked furniture at, and thrown things at his grade 5 and 6 students. He'd also been criminally convicted, not as accused, criminally convicted of assaulting children in 2010. The teachers union thought we should just give him a 2-year suspension. Thankfully, the minister overrode them and said, no, this guy's done for good. Baron Schnapp was given a 4-year suspension from the union for talking to students about penile and clitoral tattoos and piercings, along with texting back and forth with a student about masturbation. Well, again, thank you, Mr. Johnson. He stepped in and said, I don't care what the union thinks. This pervert is gone. The union also felt that a 3-year teaching suspension for Amanda Chilton was appropriate after she had a sexual affair with one of her students and attempted to cover it up. Again, the union feels that perverts who sexually touch students are all right if they just get a short suspension. Not good enough. They shouldn't be shocked when we're taking away the disciplinary power from these guys. It's ridiculous. And that was just over the period of 2 years. Every one of those teachers now, they'd be back teaching if the union's judgments weren't overturned by the minister. By the way, when the NDP was in power, David Egan was the minister. He didn't overturn a single one. Wow. Shows the NDP are owned by the unions. We can never forget that. Governments are typically terrified of taking on labor unions, particularly those unions with teachers and nurses. It's refreshing to see Minister LaGrange taking such a definitive stance on an issue sure to bring some heavy blowback upon the UCP government from the teachers union. Unions jealously guard their authority, and they will fight back against any efforts to have it reduced. So let's hope the government stands strong in this move. They've been prone to sagging under pressure at times. When it comes to new government bills, though, this one should be a no-brainer. The safety of children has to come before union interests. That's what I got for my rant today. Now, let's check in with the news, guys. We've got Eva Sudik coming in, our reporter, to tell us what's been happening at the Western Standard Newsroom. Hey, Eva, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Cory?
Pretty good. Like I said, it's an upsetting issue I was ranting about, but we're seeing perhaps some positive movement towards stopping it. So, it's a nice change.
Good to hear, but bad subject for sure. Happy Friday, and happy April 1st.
Well, thanks. I celebrate it every year.
Yeah, good for you. Along with April 1st, in the newsroom comes federal tax increases. This year, along with the alcohol tax increase, comes carbon tax. It is up 25% today. People in Saskatchewan are outraged, as yesterday the provincial government voted against providing relief by suspending provincial fuel tax. This morning, the gas hit 188.9 cents in Regina, and the provincial fuel tax, if it had been taken away by the government, it would have saved people 15 cents per liter. They're pretty jealous of us in Alberta here. I haven't checked the gas prices today, but I know that Kenny's provincial tax came off today.
Yes, I believe we have a reporter at a conference that I think Premier Kenny's holding right away now.
Yeah, I think it starts at 11. So Rachel will have something on that later today, and Kenny's comments and her very interesting questions, I'm sure, for Kenny.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. With the carbon tax being raised today, Pierre Poilievre,
Polyev. Stop listening to Derek. It's Polyev.
You're right. Polyev. Just a habit now, you know?
I know.
I have to change, especially if he becomes PM, so.
We'll get used to it.
So he held a Axe the Carbon Tax rally last night. He talked about just inflation and how much worse Canada is getting for freedom. And the carbon tax and how outraged he is on that. I'm working on a story with Alberta's Environment Minister, Jason Nixon. His comments to Federal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault. Nixon rejected the federal 2030 emissions reduction plan. He said it will only raise the cost of living for everyone. And he really said that he believes that lack of consulting on a government part led to this plan being approved. Mel attended a press conference this morning, and she'll have more info up later on Danielle Smith and her Livingstone McLeod UCP nomination. She's also looking into response from the city on the offensive comment on the blue line on police badges and their alleged white supremacy. Cory, I know you were ranting on your show earlier, so that'll be interesting to have a perspective from the city on what does it mean and what do they think about those comments.
Yeah, it'll be good to hear some follow-up. I mean, that's been left hanging. Other news hasn't touched that, but we had a pretty senior city communications official outright say that a number of police officers were wearing that patch directly. It wasn't implying it or anything. He said a lot of them, is what he said, were wearing it because they wanted to see a white supremacist police state. So I think that deserves an answer.
Mm-hmm, it definitely does. So they're actually looking all over the city for someone to respond to Mel, she said. A lot of pushing her one way and the other. So hopefully we can get good comment on that and an explanation. Canada, our border regulations changed today. Now, fully vaccinated travelers no longer need to show negative COVID result to get into the country. Canada is also on the international stage as the Pope apologized today in the Vatican for the Catholic Church's involvement in residential schools. I'll have a story up on that later today and people's response to it. How do they feel? How do the people that Canada sent, Indigenous Native people, what do they think about the Pope's apology and what he said about them? A leaked memo from the CFO of TELUS asked employees yesterday to participate in Transgender Day by attending pro-gender ideology workshops and using pronouns in their email signatures. Our reporter Amanda is working on that, and that'll be up later today too. What we do have up right now is Ottawa is to rename the Trans Mountain Pipeline after backlash from trans advocates. There are many colorful comments in there by politicians like our Prime Minister and Pierre Poilievre. Polyev. Now you got me mixed up, you know?
Oh, you'll get used to it.
Even comments about Caitlyn Jenner and her being named in the new pipeline.
Well, that's a very interesting read. I know that story garnered a lot of attention this morning.
Mm-hmm. Yes, our readers should definitely go check it out and see what that's all about. What else? Amanda is interviewing Canadian veteran James Top, who has been walking across Canada in protest of COVID mandates. We will have that live interview up on our website later today. He has made it all the way from Vancouver to Calgary so far, or Lethbridge, and then he'll be in Calgary tomorrow. And I believe he's going to speak at the Freedom Rally tomorrow as well. So there are many fans who will be excited for that one. And yeah, I had lots of teas today, but not much up on the site so far with our payday and whatnot going on. But that's all for news that we got.
Right on. Well, yes, it's been a busy day in the newsroom. So just to remind everybody, it is all coming up and going to be on the website soon. And I know I'm enjoying bugging you about Mr. Polyev's pronunciation of his name, but as a person of Eastern European descent, you've probably seen how terribly I've ruined and fumbled over many of our Eastern European guests' names. So don't worry, you'll get plenty of chances to bug me about my pronunciation efforts later.
I'll have to bug Nico as well. My name is spelled EWA, but on the show I seem to be EVA. How you pronounce it?
Well, that just makes sure that I pronounce it correctly, but we'll fix that up.
Yeah, you've been saying Eva right, so. Okay, thanks so much for having me, Cory.
All right, thanks for checking in. We'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
So yeah, guys, a whole lot is coming up today. A whole lot is in the cooker today. Usually we got a whole bunch of stories posted by now. We've got a few, absolutely. As we said, the Trans Mountain issue there with the transgender community has been a hot story, as well as some others, and they're all popping up there. Amanda's exclusive interview with James Topp is definitely going to be an interesting one to watch later as well, and all of these other issues coming up. So I do want to talk about one of our sponsors before we go further, and that is Bitcoin. Well, these guys, if you're looking to get into digital currencies, you're looking to hedge your bets, you want to stick the hard-earned money you have into somewhere safer, somewhere you know that the government can't get their hands on it. You want just, you don't trust them anymore. I don't blame you. I don't trust them. Well, Bitcoin could be the way for you. And these guys specialize in helping people who haven't been involved in digital currencies yet. And I mean, people who have as well. They have all sorts of services. But what I like about them, because I'm somewhat new to this whole thing too, is they're there to safely help you as a Western Canadian company set up your wallet, see how it works, look at some of the practical uses, whether it's paying bills or just saving or having regular transfers into your Bitcoin savings account. They walk you through it. And if you're already experienced in digital currencies, of course, they have all of the services to expand your portfolio or utilize them in other ways. Again, if it's, as Nico is showing, you can buy Bitcoin in person in places now, and you can pay bills and credit cards with it. You can, there's ATMs, yes, all over the West. They have hundreds of them. There's a map showing where they all are. It's a great way to get, like I said, into that currency, because it's kind of a nebulous, confusing world. These guys are a safe way to get involved in it. They really help you out. They got a lot of information. Check out their site, guys, bitcoinwell.com, and hey, take control of your money. So, yes, we've got lots going. As I said, Dr. Modry should be on pretty soon. I'm looking forward to that, and we'll cover a few of the things there. Some of those things as well. I mean, speaking of gender pronouns and so on, I know I've been somewhat following the dark comedy of, as we see independent media growing and so on. I'm mixed as I watch the Ryan Jesperson show's Explosion up in Edmonton, for people who are familiar with it. But either way, he had a producer who was very woke and very high strung, and she had a meltdown on the show and stomped off it. And there's a number of things behind it if you want to look up all of that. But now, after his show has been shut down over that for the last couple of weeks, it's supposed to come back next week. She has announced she will not be coming back, and that she doesn't feel safe on the show. And she's torpedoing his show from afar as a former employee. It's just something else to watch. It doesn't help the industry in general, even if left-leaning shows lose it. I just hope they learn from this. Don't hire crazy woke people. If you see a Twitter profile with all the gender pronouns and settler within it, you might want to reconsider putting that person on your payroll, because it dynamited what was still a show representing a point of view that needed to be heard out there. We'll see if he can recover from that. But hopefully there's some lessons learned. Dave Rubin, I was thinking of him as an example of this. He's a podcaster and personality in the States. He wrote a great book. I really like his point of view. And he started as a left-wing commentator. Actually, he was always very quite left-wing. And he got his butt handed to him by Larry Elder in an interview. And it was an epiphany for Mr. Rubin, though, when he realized that, man, you know what? I've been kind of wrong and full of crap for the last few years on this leftist stuff. And he converted, and he's gone classical liberal, and he's very, conservative minded, and it's been fantastic. So don't write off, some of these personalities who are far over there. People can wake up and come on, and Rubin has been fantastic. So maybe now that Mr. Jesperson has just learned what happens when you build a career on woke people, and they'd cut the legs out from underneath you without a moment's hesitation, perhaps you're on the wrong side of things, because he still could have a heck of a lot to offer. He's a smart guy, interviews people. I mean, he's very experienced with it, more so than me. That show has a place, but we'll see if they learn from that whole fiasco over there or they don't. As alternative media grows, all of us are going to be learning some interesting lessons. So I'll bring somebody in more interesting than my rambling now, and that is Dr. Dennis Modry. He's in the lobby, and he's going to talk to us about the Alberta Prosperity Project. So without ado, there we go. Hey, Dr. Modry, how you doing?
I'm excellent, Cory. Delighted to be on your show.
Great. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And like I said, you've got some strong supporters out there. The commenters on here were kept asking, hey, when are you going to talk about the Alberta Prosperity Project and so on? And I had to admit I didn't know a lot about it. So let's get the guy who knows about it on and talk about it.
Well, fundamentally, the Alberta Prosperity Project is really an inspiring initiative to unite all Albertans, businesses, and organizations on how to protect their interests, their individual freedoms and rights, and their prosperity by enabling Alberta to chart a new path forward. So fundamentally, the Alberta Prosperity Project falls under the Alberta Prosperity Society, which is a registered society. The project itself is really a massive educational program we're rolling out throughout the province to educate people on the rationale and merits of independence within Canada or independence untethered to Canada. But it becomes evident when you look at the difficulty with respect to fixing Alberta's circumstances in Confederation, given the history of Alberta and the abuse that Alberta has faced and continues to face, along with the structural electoral imbalance and then the 5 constitutional hurdles, it makes it pretty clear to most people that the opportunity to fix Alberta's circumstances in Confederation is extremely difficult. But yet we understand, Cory, that there's a significant number of people in Alberta, and actually you'll know this from the Angus Reid survey from January the 4th, in which 73% of Albertans polled were disillusioned with the federal government. So the question is what do we do? So the point is there are really fundamentally 2 major paradigms in Alberta. There are those people who would like Alberta to stay in Confederation but have a much better deal. And then there are those people who want Alberta to become a new sovereign constitutional republic. What's unifying between these 2 paradigms is that neither objective is possible because Alberta has no leverage. It has no negotiating power in order to achieve independence within Canada or independence untethered to Canada. So what is that unifying feature? What could bring the 2 paradigms together? It's the leverage of a successful referendum on independence, because that successful referendum on independence gives Alberta the moral and legal legitimacy to chart a new path forward. So envision, if you will, a government that is elected that will put the interests of Albertans first, that will go ahead, for example, and introduce, as my friend Rob Anderson has said from the Free Alberta Strategy, the Alberta Sovereignty Act, which will accelerate the process of taking control of policing, pensions, immigration, employment insurance, provincial tax collection, which sets the stage for the collection of federal taxes as well. But in addition, has new regulatory arrangements for ATB and Service Credit Union to get them out from under the control of the federal government. That would protect depositors from CRA and from the federal government. And we've seen how Albertans can be seriously compromised during the trucker revolt, and how many people were concerned who made contributions that their accounts were frozen. So that sort of thing would be eliminated. But the beauty of that referendum on independence is that once you've achieved those objectives that I just outlined, You have that referendum on independence, and I believe it will be very successful and highly successful. Then the Alberta government can then go to Ottawa and negotiate for a period of not more than 6 to 12 months. And if Alberta doesn't get the deal that it wants, it now has the moral and legal legitimacy to say to Albertans, we are now a sovereign nation. And so really that's the idea. So we need to, as part of this project, we need to educate people on the three potential outcomes. One is, if we do nothing, we're going to fall into the abyss of the Great Reset, and we don't have a lot of time. The other is to try and negotiate a better deal, and the other is to achieve independence. Those are really the only three outcomes. Either we do nothing and we know what's coming. It's not often we know the future, but we sure do know it now. Or like I say, we can chart a new path forward, trying to fix Alberta's circumstances in Confederation or becoming a new constitutional republic. But here's the key thing, is we don't have time. We don't have time for constitutional wranglings, which take 10 or 20 years or longer to resolve. We know what's coming with the WEF UN Agenda 2030 with respect to our oil and gas industry. We've seen what's been proposed, just even the other day with respect to what's coming regarding taxation of SUVs, etc. No, we need to get out from under the oppression that we faced for 116 years, that no federal government or provincial government has ever resolved it. So we need Albertans to be educated on what it's going to take to chart that new path forward. So we're setting up educational chapters throughout the province. I think we've got about 40 set up. There's about 70 in the wings. We'll probably wind up having 200 or so set up within probably 2 or 3 months. And that's the essence of what we're all about, Cory. Happy to answer any questions, though.
Great. Yeah, well, I've been looking into it, and you've been holding a lot of very well-attended meetings and quite a large schedule of a lot more to come. Something that was interesting, though, looking on the site, and you definitely are looking strongly at a partisan approach to some things, too. There's proposed party bylaws or constituency association rules, theoretically, if those would come, but there are already a couple of parties on the scene, too, that are registered anyways, that are taking an independence approach. Are you looking at forming a new party or merging? Or
No, absolutely not, Cory. It's really critical for people to understand that we must remain a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We do not want to fall under the contribution limits that are in place by Elections Alberta, for one thing. So we're nonpartisan. We do not want to be a super PAC or anything like that. We want to educate Albertans to understand what the future will be if they do nothing, and what the future could be if we do something amazing that's never been done before. So we absolutely are not going to become a party. Now, what you see on the website in terms of what we are recommending for policy and governance and what we are recommending for bylaws is the synthesis of many thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of drafting material, looking at it from the perspective of the UCP, bylaws and policies. And we took into account every party's, even federal parties, policies and governance. We worked with 3 constitutional lawyers to draft that material. So this is what we are recommending for a government to implement in terms of policies, governance, and bylaws. And so when you look at the policy document, for example, it doesn't talk about the policies of a province struggling to get out of Confederation. It talks about the policies of a sovereign constitutional republic. And the governance section describes exactly how that constitutional republic would be set up, with checks and balances that are even more robust than the US Constitution.
Okay, no, I appreciate that clarification because, as I said, I'm probably not the only one who perhaps got confused about the mandate and agenda. So
Yeah,
that's good to see because, I mean, we are seeing, unfortunately, some very ugly partisan games going on well, pretty much every level of government. But
yeah,
with some better management and guiding documents, perhaps some of that could have been avoided.
I agree with you.
So, would your organization now, as it grows, be considering looking into? I saw a couple of other commenters like encouraging this sort of movement or fostering that in neighboring provinces and other provinces as well.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question because, yes, we've had requests from Central Okanagan in BC, and we've had requests from Saskatchewan. They want to adopt our platform in terms of, our educational messaging. So there's a lot more coming, Cory. We've been working with Rapid Boost, the marketing and advertising company. They're an international company, and so you'll see a lot more material that will be coming. We'll be working with advertising or marketing our educational platform with Western Standard, and really virtually all of the media platforms that are in existence: radio, television, legacy media, alternate media, and social media in particular. So yeah, that's really where we are right now, and we're just rolling things out with Rapid Boost as we speak.
Great, and it's been, like I said, interesting to watch. I mean, there's been a lot of new organizations. We got great tools at our disposal that we never had in the past. Like way back when I was a independence activist, we didn't have the sort of social media like we do today. But you guys have gone beyond that too, and gone back in a sense of holding a lot of in-person meetings because not everybody's keen on webinars and Facebook postings and Twitter and such. They still like that traditional getting together in a room and discussing and moving forward. It seems to be working well for you guys.
Well, so far, yeah, I mean, it's really fun actually, having these events and then having, particularly the part I love the best really is the Q&A. And Tanner Naday, who's our extremely bright economist, who's on our board and speaks extremely well with respect to economic issues. Working with him and others on this project and there are many, there are thousands of people that are behind this movement. And but at these events, it's an opportunity to meet people, to talk to them in person, to answer their questions in person, and I think people really like that. And so, I think we've probably done, because we've just launched as of February the 18th, and so. It seems as though you're correct, Cory. It seems as though these events seem to engender a lot of traction. One of the things that they engender as well is the interest by people to set up educational chapters and to become volunteers. And putting it all together, I think we have a heart for Alberta. We love Alberta, and we want to protect Alberta in a way in which it's never been protected in 116 years. And in so doing, protect individuals' freedoms, rights, and prosperity, which again has not occurred. And that's why we're facing what we're facing. So I think these are very passionate Albertans who love their neighbor, love their country, but realize that Canada has left Alberta already, and we're just educating people in a way in which we can formalize that process in a way in which Alberta's circumstances are actually fixed in Confederation, which I don't think is impossible, particularly when you run through the reasons why it's not. But then again, it gives people hope for a better future. But the key thing in all of this is when you create a movement, remember what Ralph used to say. He said, find a parade and get in front of it. And so what we're doing is we're creating that parade. We're creating that movement. And we want to have, 500,000 minimum, but better 1 million or more members of this movement, because as you know, 3.5% of the population will control the outcome of the election, and we want the members to support a government that honestly and legally will implement policies that will protect people's individual rights, their freedoms, and their prosperity in a way in which has never been done before. So I think we're at a precipice in Alberta society and in Alberta's relationship with the federal government. I expect that, we're going to be attacked. Any independence movement is going to be attacked. But, there's no reason, for example, that the UCP couldn't adopt these policies. There's no reason why the UCP couldn't combine with the Wild Rose Party and adopt these policies. There's no reason why those two parties couldn't align with other parties and adopt these policies. The key thing is Albertans need to be unified as to what it's going to take to protect ourselves and our future and our kids' future.
Well, that's great. I always appreciate more, just more discourse and movement towards independence. I feel that the Canadian system, personally, I've said that a lot of times, is actually broken, and we need some sort of catalyst to repair it, whether it's the full independence of a province and provinces, or at least coming to the brink so much that Canadians are finally willing to re-examine how we're sitting. So I like the direction you're going in. I see you got a couple events coming up. There's going to be one in Stettler tonight, it looks like, and one in Sherwood Park tomorrow. Yep. Where can people find information on you guys, your website and your social media presence and such?
Well, if you just go onto the website, you'll see the events advertised and the locations as well. So they should be there. If you just scroll down a bit, there's the Sherwood Park one, for example. Now, I should tell you, we've got something interesting coming up. Next Saturday in Red Deer, we've done something unique. We've invited all of the political parties in the province to provide a brief outline of their vision for the future and how they intend to achieve that vision. And then after that, we'll have a break, and then we'll have a roundtable and ask, or I should put it this way, and permit questions to be answered by the individual presenters. So I think that's going to be kind of exciting. We hope to live stream it to a few 100,000 people in the province or more. And we'll see which parties show up. We don't know yet. We've got some confirmation, but we'll be advertising that soon. Yeah. So here's the list. I think there's 10 or 11. We've got a whole bunch more. I mean, it's pretty remarkable, Cory. I'm really surprised myself at how many requests we have for presentations throughout the province. So I think we're doing a good job, getting this movement going. I love the idea of, working with Rob Anderson and his Free Alberta strategy. If we can get him to and he's going to be speaking as well. So
might be having a connection issue here, Dr. Modry. I understand perhaps you're living in a rural area. I know I've been enjoying that in Pritis. We'll see if you come back on, but if not, we'll just kind of close this off. We're getting to the end. So just a reminder to everybody, as he was saying, there's a lot of events. Go to albertaprosperityproject.com and you can see what they're up to there. If you can still hear me there, Dr. Modry, I appreciate you coming on to join us today. As I said, our viewers were looking forward to it, and they appreciated the talk today. I hope we can talk again soon as your movement progresses. Okay, but I believe the internet bugs have gotten Dr. Modry, but as you can find more follow-up, and I do hope we can talk to him in the future as things develop. So I'm going to get back to it. I didn't say after the news, I do have to start talking about how we pay our bills, and that is through subscribers. So, all those stories that Eva was talking about, all the new exclusive interviews, things like that are coming up on the website. Get on to westernstandardonline.com and take out a membership, guys. This is how we can keep reporting on things, getting these guests that mainstream media won't touch, having those conversations they don't want to have. We can only do it because we've had a fantastic response from subscribers, and we want to keep it going, and we can keep expanding. We got new reporters all across the country, all over the place, and we're getting good, unique content. So for $10 a month, it's well worth it. And if you use the coupon code TRIGGERED, you get another $10 off that. Take out an annual one. It's $100 a year, less than $10 a month, less than old newspaper subscriptions used to be. So, hey guys, take it on. Allow us to keep moving like this, sponsors and subscribers. And that way we can remain never taking a single nickel from the government, and we won't. Now, I know some talk about with Dave Rubin, some people saying he's still not necessarily credible because he's him and his husband are they've got a surrogate set up, and they're going to be adopting a child. I got to make it clear, guys. I'm a social liberal. Don't make mistakes about who I am, and I'm just thrilled that Mr. Rubin and his husband are doing that, and I'm sure they're going to make fantastic parents, and it's great. And I got no issue with that whatsoever. I have no concerns about what his personal life is, and his political views are very common sense and cutting and conservative in all the right ways. But we do have stuff that is going over the edge and crazy, particularly with all this gender crap, like I was talking about with the pronouns in the bio of the person, that was hired at another show that ended up blowing them up. Either way, we're just getting nuts when we have, pre-operative men competing with women in sports. There was a case, I guess, with a bicyclist, though, in a bike race as a transgender was actually refused. They finally said, no, you are not competing against women. It is an unfair advantage. I mean, we've got to face the physiological realities. We got to get around it, but we can still have some fun with some of these things too. So I'm going to read a list from the Babylon Bee. That's a spoof site. I don't really have an April Fool's joke on the go today, but I like some humor now and then. And these guys have their questions on whether or not you're a man, because apparently that's pretty confusing lately. We don't know necessarily if you are a man. So they ask the questionnaire so you can find out. Number 1, do you pretend to enjoy cigars? Number 2, is it uncomfortable crossing your legs for some reason? And it's funny. Justin Trudeau never has a problem with that. Number 3, do you stand by open car hoods, pointing and gesturing? Yeah, we like to pretend we know what the hell we're doing in there. Number 4, can you effortlessly win at every women's sport? That's an important distinction. Number 5, do you enjoy thinking about absolutely nothing for long periods of time? I think there's some women who have that trait as well. So I'm not sure if that one fully lines it up, but that does cover us a bit. Number 6, are you incapable of finding the milk in the fridge even when staring directly at it? Number 7, do you refer to a team of professional athletes who have no idea who you are as we? Number 8, can you navigate unfamiliar roads but are hopelessly lost in a mall? Number 9, do you pause Lord of the Rings 800 times to provide your own commentary on the plot? Number 10, would you be completely and utterly helpless without your spouse? Number 11, did you think about sex 27 times while reading this list? 28, 29, good grief. Number 12, here's a big one. Do you have XY chromosomes? So, if your score, as if you were keeping track of that and checking on any and all of those off, if your score is over 6, you're probably a man. I can't say for sure, though, because I'm not a biologist. And apparently, you have to be to determine these genders. So, yes, there's a line to be walked. Again, I have no issues with a couple of men being married, a couple of women, as long as they're happy, it's consensual, it's adult. Good, be happy, go out and do things. Adopt children. Hey, as long as you're great parents, come on. We got a lot of horrible parents out there who are male and female. There's no assurances they're going to be good parents just because a couple is straight. So I'm certain there will be some unfortunately bad gay parents and such too. And there's a lot of kids just need good unified families raising them, and I'm thrilled when I see that happen. But we also see these movements, these woke movements, going absolutely bananas, and with this stuff about trying to pretend that a man swimming amongst a bunch of women is a realistic, a competitive thing to do. Again, if that person wants to identify as a woman, that's fine. But come on, guys, sports, there's just physiological realities we have to face. We're getting beyond the pale here now. You can't change that. Try, but you can't change it. Let's see. Here's some interesting stuff anyways. We got the government did some polling on vaccine politics prior to the last federal election. They were polling on vax mandates and found they were most divisive in regions where the Liberals didn't hold many seats. They basically realized Liberals like the mandates and Liberal supporters do and Conservative supporters don't. And this was just days before Trudeau called that snap elections. And regionally, there's some notable differences. And Atlantic Canada, for example, showed unanimous support for vaccine passports on flights, and Alberta and Saskatchewan were unanimous in opposing it. This is stuff we kind of already know, anyways. What kind of gets to me, though, is this is polling done on the government dime. Polling is very expensive. Polling for political parties is a part of the lifeblood of the party. There's no avoiding it. It's important to them. You're always measuring, you're always checking, you choose your policies or at least your reactions or your electoral strategies based on it. But you see, a party should spend their own bloody money on that. They should be getting it from donors. They should be getting it, from supporters, so they can pay for their polling. But in this case, the federal government uses cabinet polling. They use your tax dollars to see if and when it's a good time for them to call an election. And don't think for a second that this alliance between the Liberals and NDP is going to make it all the way until 2025, as they claim. It won't. And a large part of what's going to cue that for them is polling. The Liberals are going to be polling like crazy, and as soon as they think they can win a majority, as issues go up and down over the next couple of years, they will pull the pin without hesitation. Again, that's just the way it goes. But we shouldn't have to pay for that. That shouldn't be coming out of our dollars as taxpayers. They should pay for their own bloody polling information. What else did we have? Yeah, somebody was asking something about Danielle Smith. I'm not sure if you're going to repeat that question, but Danielle's back in the race. Something I found interesting, I'm not sure, I was asking about earlier. So Danielle's going to run down in Livingston-McLeod, and that's a constituency just down south. They really rejigged things. In Priddis, in my place, it used to actually be Livingstone-McLeod. And then the NDP changed all the borders and everything because they were trying to save their member out in Banff Cochrane, as it was at that time. So they changed it to Banff Kananaskis. And then High River is no longer actually in Highwood any longer. And the Livingstone-McLeod is where High River is, and that's where Danielle resides. So she's going to run for the nomination for that spot. And she's not making bones about it that if the leadership role becomes open, she will run for the leadership. And she's also said if Jason Kenney stays with power, she'll stay on as an MLA, which is, I guess, something that Brian Jean didn't say, as far as, because we know darn well Jean isn't going to stay if he can't be leader. He's kind of proven that before. But nobody's been asking, maybe somebody else can answer this for me, is we've got, what's his name, Roger Reed, and he's the MLA down in Livingstone-McLeod. He's the incumbent one there right now. Is he stepping aside? Is he planning to step aside? Or does Danielle just feel he's, replaceable in the nomination, that she can knock off the incumbent? Just some questions that we didn't quite ask. Dave did a very good interview with Danielle yesterday, covered a lot of ground on things like that. But that was one that wasn't hit. And I'm kind of wondering, because that nomination isn't a sure thing for Danielle Smith either. I mean, if Reed holds it's hard to knock off an incumbent. And if he holds a strong campaign, Danielle's campaign might be stopped right in the gates when she's trying to go for the nomination. So that story is far from done with what's going on with Danielle Smith. It's still interesting to see that she's interested in getting back into politics. I mean, I've known Danielle a long time. I was very involved in the Wild Rose Party in the past. I was on the executive when Danielle won the leadership. It's a long story I'll tell one day, but the night when it got leaked that she was doing that mass floor crossing, I was a part of the ones leaking that out. I was very upset at that time. I mean, I certainly hadn't talked to Danielle for a couple of years after that crossing and that mess. We've been in communication again since, of course. I mean, I've had her on the show and we've seen her around here. We've kind of let those bygones be bygones, haven't taken it personally. And I still greatly respect her. I thought she was fantastic in radio, and she's great in broadcast in general, or writing. I'm not sure about the jump back into politics. It's going to be very difficult. I think, one of the problems is just it's trust, right? So we'll see. I mean, Danielle's well aware that that's a challenge. We've heard that in the interviews and in talking to her. Can she overcome those, though? That's going to be a big handicap trying to climb back up. I think she'll be great in government again. I don't know about leadership. We'll see as things unfold and so on. She's very, very smart, very good policies, very common sense, but again, has that handicap of making that extremely poor judgment in crossing the floor back in some years ago with the Wild Rose Party and whether or not enough people will forgive it. As we see with like Tyler Volstad saying, Smith is dead to me. We wouldn't have gotten the NDP if she didn't cross the floor. Jackie saying splitting the vote. Alberta Free saying she can't be trusted, I believe it was, when it went up the scroll. This is, June saying Albertans remember. See, so Danielle's got a very big battle to try and convince a lot of people that she's learned, and her judgment will be more stable, I guess you could say, going forward. We'll see, but what a crazy time we are in federally, provincially. We've got this race going on in Alberta. Well, it's not even a race; it's the leadership review. The battles that are going on, the changing of the rules. Kenny's fighting for his political life. A large groundswell is fighting against him. That party, if Kenny maintains it and stays at the head, is clearly going to split. There's some MLAs that are going to have to leave the party and cross the floor to somewhere or just be independents. Federally, yeah, we got 10 federal leadership candidates now. I got Roman Baber, who's going to be on a minute ago. And I've interviewed about 4 or 5 others, and I'm hoping to interview each and every one of them. But this is a very wide spectrum in the federal race going on right now. Where that'll go, it's hard to say. There's quite some diversity. I'm just going to check really quickly, see if I've heard from Roman there. No. We don't know whether this next conservative leader is going to be another prime minister for Canada, or if it's going to be another opposition leader. I mean, their shelf life hasn't been all that fantastic as of late. Scheer and O'Toole didn't make it very long before their own parties essentially tossed them by the wayside. So the visions this time are quite different, though. And I mean, something I'm hoping I can get Mr. Baber on. Like, there's been a few issues I've had trouble with, like supply management. I can't find any one of these guys really willing to knock off that ridiculous, nasty Soviet era policy. And the reason for it is we have an extremely strong dairy lobby. They call it cartels. It's what it is in Canada. It's that system that protects a small number of quota holders. And these quotas, they're assets. They're very expensive. Some of these places, they're worth millions of dollars. You can't just devalue it and flush it. You will be sued. I understand that. But it's time for that system to go. That system was in other countries before, like in New Zealand and Australia. They got rid of theirs. They bought out the quotas. It takes a little while, but they get it out. And I've been very disappointed with these leadership candidates, though, that none of them are willing to take on those cartels. They just don't have the courage to do it. Pierre Poilievre, said no, it would cost more to get rid of it than to keep it, which I don't agree with or believe. At least he gave an honest answer where he sits on it. But these cartels really get to these leadership contenders, and they donate a lot of money. Because there's big money in protectionism. Leslyn Lewis, she went on about actually some of the myths, one of which I should have called her on, but I'm trying to be nicer to these candidates as I bring them on, at least for the first round. I don't want to be not nice, but I'll be a little more cutting as we get future interviews. But she gave that myth about American milk having a high pus content. Guys, that's BS. That's baloney. And that's the sort of crap that the, again, Canadian dairy cartel spreads out there, and is not true whatsoever. And none of these conservative candidates will tackle that one. And I mean, some people get mad. I use the term, and I'll keep using it. I call it the Soviet-style supply management system, because that's exactly what it is. And for those unfamiliar with it, I mean, it sounds so benign. Supply management, so what? Well, it's complete control by the government of the entire industry. I mean, how do you think of anything more Soviet than making it illegal for you to sell something you made, something you own? Because that's what it does. If you go and get some cows and start milking them and try to sell your milk without getting a government quota, they will throw you in jail. It is against the law. You have to buy one of those quotas from somebody else, most of whom, by the way, are in Quebec. It's no coincidence as well. These candidates don't want to stir up Quebec on that one. But that's what you have to do. You can own chickens. I did. For the first time in a while today, I didn't get teased about how I had to cull my flock last week. But either way, you can own chickens up to 300, which if you're in a commercial situation, isn't that many. As soon as you have 301, if you don't have a quota and you sell one of those chickens, you will go to jail. Turkeys, same thing. Eggs, as Ashley is pointing out, same thing. That's all under the supply management. And it's all a bunch of lies when people try to justify it and say why we have to keep it. Look, the beef industry doesn't need supply management. The pork industry doesn't need supply management. All sorts of other industries do not need it. We don't need it with the dairy here, and we really got to stop that one. There's been a number of studies and papers done on supply management showing that it costs the average family anywhere from $500 to $800 a year. And these are older studies, so it's probably gone up with inflation these days, especially with food, on their grocery bill, because they're paying that much more for their dairy, poultry, and eggs, which are staples, and they go into every other part of food too, right? So, man, that's what starts getting somebody frustrated. That's where you start seeing independence-minded people. That's when I start seeing and realizing that our system's broken. It's more than just policies, guys. When we have a bunch of people who literally have conservative in the name of their party, and not a one has the courage to take on a Soviet-era policy, a Soviet-style policy. The last one to do it was Bernier, and if people remember that race, that was actually the big turning point where Scheer thought it was cute actually at a dinner to do his thing and show the milk mustache, because people knew he got bought by the dairy cartel. That was the thing, and Bernier wouldn't, and it cost Bernier the leadership. But we've got more of them to talk to. I do hope Mr. Baber makes it on soon. We'll see what happens, I guess. But that's one of the issues I've asked every one of them on, and yes, it hasn't looked very promising for them. And here's another story coming out. Cost of living to go higher. Inflation is likely to remain high and climb even higher. Statistics Canada told a Commons Finance Committee. Again, they're almost stating the obvious. I think we all kind of knew that. Analysts say they'll have to change methods used to account for some price gains that explain the difference between Canada and USA. But yeah, we're seeing the price of everything rising, and our differential between the United States and Canada is a large part of that. Well, one of the most blatant and straightforward ones, again, is the dairy. Go down there, check out the price of cheese in the States. Boy, it's a fraction of what we pay over here. Things like that. And there's another story. Oh yes, this is back to crime doesn't pay, and this ties into another product that people forget that is supply managed in Canada. Actually, is maple syrup. It really is. And the Supreme Court ruled yesterday and upheld a steep fine against a ringleader in the biggest maple syrup heist in Canadian history. So Parliament sending a clear message, this is from their quotes, that crime doesn't pay, and thus attempting to discourage individuals from organizing themselves and committing profit-driven crimes. So I think I guess it depends on the crimes. Yeah, there's violent crimes and things, but a lot of the property crimes are profit-driven. So the syrup case, Chief Justice Wagner gives the court an opportunity to clarify the scope of judicial discretion. So in 2011, Richard Valère of St. Louis de Blanford, Quebec, was a leading syrup bootlegger. Yeah, this is what happens when the government screws with the market. This is how it came about. We had syrup bootleggers. As absurd as that sounds, it's true. Because when the government screws with the market, the price goes through the roof and black markets form. You get bootleggers. It happened when liquor was banned. It happened a long time ago when cigarette prices went way high in Canada through taxes, but they weren't in the States. So a massive cigarette smuggling industry built up in the 80s and 90s in Canada. And Canada actually cut their taxes to stop that. Well, the supply management of maple syrup led to this bootlegging. So this guy conspired with 16 accomplices to steal 9,500 barrels from a warehouse. And he admitted to operating in black market syrup for 10 years. Like, there's a cottage black market syrup industry. Can you get any more Canadian than that? Either way, acknowledged his only income between 2012 and 2011 was from selling maple syrup. Wow. And a story, if you go farther back, and I believe it was in Toronto and Montreal, and I know this from owning a pub that sold pizza. Cheese is a huge expense. You things I don't think about, but cheese is massive. I was spending $10,000 a month in cheese, and I was in a small pub. Would it be $10,000 a month? Yeah, I was getting close to that. Because I mean, the most expensive part of a pizza, guys, is cheese. Pizzas give good margins and everything, but the cheese costs you a lot. And those big blocks of mozzarella we'd have to grind up, very expensive. Well, this cheese, there was actual cheese smugglers who were smuggling it up to restaurants in Toronto and Montreal from the United States because, hey, that makes a big difference in your bottom line. Again, it shows how anything, if the government will regulate anything too much, black market people, mafia, and so on will actually take advantage of it and create a bigger black market. And that's happening with dairy products, which is how stupid it is. Let's talk about one of our sponsors quickly while we keep going here, and that's the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. These guys, let's tell you before we get on further with the show, talking about some of our rights, protecting your rights, standing up for your things. The Canadian Shooting Sports Association has been a sponsor of ours for quite a while. Their name says what they are, who they are, and what they are about. They are an association for people who enjoy firearms. Whether you want to collect them, target shoot, hunting, whatever, it's your business. But there's a government that's always trying to take them away from you, that's trying to whittle away at your rights, that keeps recategorizing your firearms and turning law-abiding people into criminals. And it's wrong. And we can't allow that to keep happening. So these guys have legal challenges out on behalf of firearm owners, and they're pushing back against the Liberals. But they need your help. They need you. I mean, you can't just rely on somebody else to protect your rights. You got to stand up for yourself. And that means going on there. Their website is cssa-cila.org. And you can take out a membership with them. And that helps them keep these challenges up and keep people informed with things. As you can see, that there's also a lot of other videos, resources, tutorials, links to, it's an association. It's a full service package. So it's not just a lobby group. That's just one of the things they do. And it's an important one. But if you own a firearm, you should be with these guys. They'll keep you up to date on things and help you with that stuff. So please check them out. The Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Take out a membership and protect your property and rights, guys. They've been a great sponsor. Where else are we going here? Progressives, blah, 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 blah. Come on, give me some good contents, guys. Yeah, cheese smugglers. I buy from them for sure. Yeah, Alberta free. If I could, I would have when I had my bar. Things I would do. My mother's American. I'd go down to Idaho to visit sometimes. And literally I would buy, hit the Costco and get a big thing of the Parmesan cheese and bring it home. Because again, a giant thing of good Parmesan, we're talking a quarter of the price. I couldn't bring back massive amounts or I could have gotten in big trouble at the border. But even then it would save me some money and help offset my cost of gas for going down on the visit. So, we're into a strange world, and our leadership candidates, again, if they won't take on such a no-brainer as supply management, why won't they? There's the other, I saw a commenter saying, but the Americans have GMO theoretically, and Canada's is theoretically free. Guys, it's all regulation. It's all labeling. Some down in the States allows GMO, some doesn't. Individual producers are allowed to do it. That's the way competition works. It's a good thing. And in Canada, there is no competition. You can't. Sure, they set their quality standards high, but the quality standards in the States are not low. That's a myth. That's BS. It's BS. And we pay through the nose for it. And it hurts us. We get in crap with trade agreements. It's one of the things whenever we get in a trade fight with other countries, European and American, they bring up, well, you guys protect your dairy and it's unfair, so we want concessions over here and here. It puts a thorn into our general trade issues. Somebody else saying butter as well. Yeah, it's half the price. All of those dairy products. And these are things, you won't export raw milk and things like that typically, but you can export cheeses, butters, and these things are done a lot. New Zealand found when they got rid of their supply management system. So I'm going to bust a few more myths because it's a big beef with me, that one. Supply management advocates keep saying that it protects the small family farm. That's absolutely untrue. It's completely easily to blow that myth out of the water. It's a lie. When supply management was brought about, there were thousands and thousands of small dairy farms across Canada. Now there's hundreds, and they're huge operations. They're big commercial operations. And again, most of them are in Quebec. Part of the supply management worry was about having stable food supplies. That's fair enough. But that's because you had a number of items that don't keep well for shipping. But you got to remember, refrigeration wasn't as good back then. Refrigerated trucking, as well as processes for pasteurization. There wasn't as big a markets for exporting specialty things like cheeses and butter and stuff like that. Freezing, we can sell chicken now. We can sell turkey. Eggs actually keep for a fairly long time. We don't need this system. Otherwise, pork producers would have to have it. Somebody else brought up the wheat board. You got to remember, socialists all said, the world's going to end if we get rid of the wheat board. The grain farmers are all going to be toast. No, they weren't. They were fine. We got to get rid of these archaic market control policies. They're hurting us all. Vince is asking how bee honey is sold. That one I think is fairly unregulated. I got a beehive I'm actually starting. My bees are coming at the end of the month. I'm pretty excited about that. Though I'm not going into it commercially. It'll be a hobby. But I think honey is fairly lightly regulated. There's a registry for hives and, for the commercial ones and things that you got to follow. One of the nice things with honey, it's amazing. It travels and it keeps very well. And I guess Canadian honey is very high in demand, particularly our stuff from up north. northern Saskatchewan, northern Alberta, all that alfalfa and clover and even the canola and that, it really makes for really good product, apparently, as far as the honey goes. You can export those things, but there's no supply management system there. You can start your own beekeeping business if you want and try and set up. There we go. Yeah, Calvin's on board. Okay, yeah, Calvin knows far more about the honey industry than I do. And as he said, it's not supply managed. There's some simple regulations, but it's easy. And that's the way every business should be. I mean, I believe I'm not an anarchist. As I said, I'm a classical liberal. I want minimal government, but I understand we've got to have some. And I want minimal regulations, but I got to understand we have some. If somebody was, I don't know, padding their honey products with some sort of fake product to make it, go farther, I want to see them busted for that. I believe in effective labeling. When it comes to the GMO things and stuff like that, as long as there's clear labeling, I don't have an issue with it. Typically, people can make up their own minds. I mean, most science says GMO is fine anyways, but if a person's uncomfortable with it, they should have the right to know what's in what they're purchasing and choose appropriately and let competition in the free market deal with it. Let consumers get what they want. We don't get that in dairy. We don't get it in chicken. We don't get it in turkey. We don't get it in eggs. And we don't have a single bloody conservative candidate willing to strongly come out against that. And that's sad because, I mean, we got a lot of other big policies that are pretty bad for Canada that we need candidates to come out against. And they aren't on the block for it yet. So where else what else are you not going to touch because it's politically not expedient? That really worries me a lot with these guys. But we'll keep on them. Their campaign's long. It's going all the way until September 10th. So sometime between now and then, I will track down Mr. Babber and find out why he stood us up today. And we will get him on and talk to him. But as Ashley is pointing out too, pasteurized and unpasteurized honey are available. Yeah, so again, it's consumer choice, right? As long as it's labeled and people know what they're getting, why not? Whether you think one is better or worse than the other, it's beautiful that way. But we've got a lot of people of a mindset that hate the free market. They want the government to control anything and everything. They don't think we can be trusted with our own markets to take care of things. Babber's done a good job in Ontario. He seems good, but I'm curious why he hasn't shown up after taking a long time to respond to interview requests. Is he unresponsive and unreliable? I don't know. I can't speak for that. I mean, we all make mistakes. A campaign is a crazy time. I'm not going to get on his case at this point about it or anything like that. I mean, we'll find out what happened. It was a scheduling confusion. One of the things that keeps happening a lot with guests, and I keep trying to drive it home to them, I put it in big bold print for the interview time, MST. We are on Mountain Standard Time. And we've had a number of guests make that mistake. And just didn't get the time zone right, and they don't make it on time for an interview. So we keep pushing that. The challenge is, as I said, of being live. I love being live, that interaction with you guys and with the guests and stuff like that. But once in a while, it leads to these kinds of, snafus, but it's not the end of the world. As you can see, I can babble at length on issues as we go. Here's Casey Willising, university administrators, professors with six-figure incomes preaching socialism and whining for more government funding. Yeah, that's another huge area. And another area politicians are terrified of is academia and how sick our school's been getting. There's a fantastic guy out there, Gad Saad, who's an academic, and he wrote a book called The Parasitic Mind that really goes in and lays out a whole bunch of how nasty and sick the woke world is in the universities and academia. And of course, that's impacting and influencing the students who are coming out. And yeah, these profs make some big friggin' money. And they're protected. They're protected by tenure. They can put out their crazy stuff, and the students aren't much better. Unless you're on the wrong side. We found that with Professor Widdowson in Calgary at Royal University. She wasn't woke enough, and she went into subjects they didn't like, and her tenure, it appears, didn't protect her, and they still managed to fire her, which is a frightening development as well while we're at it. So Mountain Daylight Time. Yeah, I understand, but Vince, but either way, for time, I still call it Mountain Standard as far as that goes. Maybe I'm wrong with it. Whatever. People should know which one we're talking about when we get rolling out of Calgary. But we'll get him back, I'm sure. He did want to talk to us. He's not dodging or deking on purpose. I'm certain it was just a mistake. So we will talk to him. Now, I'm going to wrap things up. I think today we'll get on to that April Fool's Friday, but I'm going to remind everybody to tune in Monday. And I emailed with him today. I know he's going to come out. Mike Baker, and he's from, he used to be with the VP at the Calgary Police Association, because he's going to respond to some of this crap we've been seeing. I mean, where the thin blue line, they've been calling them white supremacists and things like that. And we want to hear from officers. This is so demoralizing for these guys. Let's give them a voice to talk back and explain what's going on here. So that's going to be a really good conversation with Mike Baker. And I'm going to have Cory on. He was a member of Parliament for Edmonton for some years, and he was with the Conservative Party. And then we're going to break down a little more on the leadership race. It's good to talk to somebody. I don't hold a membership anymore. I mean, I watch all these things closely, but I'm not inside any longer. I haven't had a membership in any of them for years. Cory, of course, is still very politically dialed in, so we'll get some good insight on what is going on with that federal Conservative race. And of course, there'll be lots of ranting and other things to go after that. So thank you all, guys, for oh, wait a minute. Oh, wow. In the last second, it looks like Mr. Baber has just popped into the lobby here. Okay. So great. Hang in there, guys. I'm glad you didn't bail out quite yet. And we do have our guest, Roman Baber, coming in. So we'll pull him into the studio. Hey, Mr. Baber, how you doing?
I apologize for the delay. We had a little bit of an issue checking into a hotel, but I'm glad to be with you.
Okay, great. Well, no, we're glad we got you. Some viewers have been really looking forward to hearing from you today, as have I. And yeah, I was just about to close it off. I was worried, sometimes I was talking about time zones, and that sometimes leads to some problems, and you're out in Ontario. So I guess just as an introduction, you were a member of provincial parliament in Ontario, previously with the Conservatives. You got into a kerfuffle with your party leader, Mr. Ford, and found yourself as an independent, and are now, I could be getting some of this wrong, and are now running for the Conservative leadership.
Correct. So my name is Roman Baber. I'm an independent MPP for the riding of York Centre, which is in North Toronto. I was elected in 2018 with Premier Ford. Regretfully, after authoring a letter in January 2021 opposing the lockdowns, I was asked to leave Doug Ford's Conservative caucus. My proposition was that COVID is a serious infection, and it certainly requires protection for vulnerable populations that are particularly susceptible to COVID. But it doesn't mean that we should be locking down 15 million Ontarians or 35 million Canadians and potentially making them sick as a result. And so we should factor in the toll of the lockdowns into our public health and public policy response. And since then, I was a principal advocate against overreaching government measures, including passports and mandates. And approximately a month ago, I have announced that I'm seeking the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Excellent. So I guess it'd be safe to assume you would have opposed the imposition of the Emergencies Act against Canadians who were protesting against the mandates.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, the invocation of the Emergency Act does not meet the letter of the law, in that there's other pieces of legislation that are able to deal with it, in that there was no prevalent national emergency that was dangerous to many lives or safety of Canadians. And to add insult to injury, the emergency itself was invoked by Parliament after the alleged emergency was over. When I think back to the invocation of the Emergencies Act, I think back to February 18th, which was probably a very difficult day for many Canadians, including myself, to watch truly peaceful protesters be handled in that manner by police. But I think a wonderful thing has also happened that day, in that we saw that there was no injuries to the police, there was no resistance by the protesters, and that they peacefully accepted, regretfully, the regretful conduct of the police, and had vindicated all of those that have accused this movement, be it the mainstream media or the government, and proved that indeed that was a peaceful movement. And that is how we'll choose to remember it, and hope that history will reflect on it appropriately.
Yeah, I believe, hopefully we'll see some investigations and look back and really get a clear picture of what happened there, because we can't let this be swept under the rug. It's such an unprecedented and dangerous move in Canadian history.
Look, we've seen, regretfully, a lot of overreach by the federal government. I think what's most regretful is that Justin Trudeau, or in fact no level of government, had the decency or the leadership to speak to the truckers or anyone else there about the reason they were there, which is mandates. And I'm on record. In fact, I'm the only politician, to my knowledge, in Canada that brought legislation to protect workers against workplace mandates. And in Ontario, unfortunately, my Jobs and Jabs bill was defeated by the Doug Ford Conservative government on second reading. But no one had the decency to speak to them about the reason they were there, which is their ability to put food on the table without doing something against their will. And that is a trite proposition that I would think most Canadians would agree with. And it's regretful that the conversation had delineated to this discourse.
Yeah, there's a lot of lives, unfortunately, been very disrupted and ruined through all of that. So I'll pivot back though to some more broad concern. As I've been asking other candidates on some of those federal issues, and we come quite often from a regional approach. Of course, we're a Western publication, and there's been a lot of regional, unrest, I guess you could say, from the West. Some of these issues, well, one's a little bit regional, but it was I might as well jump right to that because I was talking about it just before you came on, and that's our supply management system. That's been, an issue and problematic for some people and dairy producers, dairy consumers for some years now. Would you be willing to start looking towards dismantling that?
I don't know. I'll have some consultations on that issue, but I certainly appreciate that. I think that the global supply chain has been disrupted by lockdowns and government overreach, and then regretfully, when you reopen the market, then you obviously have a great deal of demand. And that in part causes a significant appreciation in pricing. But I think that generally, I think Ottawa needs to rethink the way it deals with the West. I'm going to embrace Canada's natural resources. I will not let oil and gas be canceled. I think our natural resources are a blessing. And not just energy. I think we need to develop mining for precious metals that are very much needed right now around the world. We need to stop buying resources from rogue regimes, not just to fix our balance sheet, but I think doing so will be better for the planet because Canada will do it safer and cleaner than anyone else in the world. I think we need to repeal Bill C-69 to build new pipelines and to ensure that all provinces are included in the national conversation.
Great. So I'm going to move on to Senate for a moment, and something I've asked every candidate as well. In Alberta, we've had a tradition for quite some time of going through the motions, at least, of electing our senators to nominate, as a province to put forward. Sometimes that's actually succeeded, and we've had some who were appointed after we've elected, and other times we haven't. The Liberals are very strongly against that. But would you commit as a leader and assuming presumably eventually Prime Minister to appoint elected senators from provinces, whether Alberta or otherwise?
I think as someone who is very interested in the Charter and Canada's Constitution, I am a lawyer by profession. I practiced for 12 years prior to my election to Parliament, primarily in commercial and civil litigation. I think that perhaps a national conversation may be in order about the role of the Senate. I think that, if anything, the role of the Senate has been magnified subsequent to the invocation of the Emergencies Act. Because I'm of the view, and I suspect that in fact Justin Trudeau withdrew the legislation, and because he didn't have the votes in the Senate, and so it appears as if the House of sober second thought, as our first Prime Minister referred to it, may have a much greater role to play in our democracy than we frankly thought. And so I think that as Prime Minister, I will engage in robust conversation to see what makes sense for Canada and Canada's democracy, which is the principal reason why I'm in the CPC leadership race, but also to see what our provincial partners might be thinking and what is on the table. I would not want to presuppose that outcome, but I certainly think that there's room to improve Canada's democracy.
Okay, and then going further, we also had a referendum here in Alberta recently on equalization. Most of the province, at least the citizens, feel that the program, the way it's set up right now, hasn't been fair to Alberta and much of the West. And we do understand it's constitutionally entrenched, but the formula is within the authority of the federal government to calculate, and it doesn't feel like it has served us well. Would you look at equalization reform?
I would certainly look to have a conversation with all provinces about where we are, but I think that we need to have a greater conversation beyond equalization. And that is, I think that I'm running on restoring not just Canada's democracy, which I feel has been eroded, but also Canadian opportunity. And that's by way of housing, by way of access to healthcare. We know that Canada has one of the lowest number of beds per capita in the OECD countries. I think we need to look at energy and the way that we transport energy across the country, and frankly, allow every province to be included in the national conversation. And that would probably include a discussion as to how we do equalization in our country.
Okay. Something that came out kind of out of the blue, but I mean, it was refreshing to see something new in a leadership race, but I didn't quite anticipate it. But was when Mr. Polyev mentioned expanding the role of digital currencies or encouraging it and things such as that. Do you see a role in embracing further with digital currencies within Canada, or how it should be regulated or dealt with?
So I respect and like human ingenuity. And when it comes specifically to cryptocurrency, I would suggest that I would encourage the progress that we're making as Canadians on cryptocurrency, as long as it meets principal conditions, which is transparency in the market and equal access to the market, then I'm in favor of that. What I am, however, concerned with is any friction by government as to the ability of Canada's citizens to use digital currency or currency generally. That's the nature of cash, is that it is negotiable. And that means that it's non-negotiable. It doesn't matter who uses a $20 bill or where they use it. It's just as good a $20 bill anywhere or by anyone. And it's that nature of currency that I do not wish for government to interfere in any way. I think that in the last couple of years, we have seen a great erosion of rights and freedoms around the country. And I do not believe that we want to go down the path where government has any friction as to how Canadians deal with their monetary currency.
Okay, so going a little wider into foreign affairs, which of course is very pressing right now. We've got a terrible situation going on in Eastern Europe in particular. And sort of in a broader question, what do you see as Canada's role on the international scene? Like, are we to be something of a military power, a peacekeeper, an intervener, or staying clear? Where do we land, and where do you see Canada in the future?
Sure. Well, my mom's family is from Ukraine, and I myself was born in Russia when it was still the Soviet Union. And I'm very heartbroken by the events in Ukraine. And we're witnessing a catastrophic loss of life and infrastructure. And I believe that first and foremost, there needs to be a greater effort to end the conflict. And so I'm glad that negotiations are ongoing, but I think we have to bring the parties to a ceasefire. With respect to Canada's general role in the world, I think that I would not be in favor of interventionism, but I would want to broadcast a hopeful message of human rights and Canada's democracy around the world. However, I think that opportunity is now eroded because Canada's credibility on the world stage as a democratic nation has eroded. And so we can't be advocates for democracy around the world where 3.5 million Canadians cannot board a plane because of their medical status, or when folks are losing jobs daily because they made a different medical choice. And so I think that before we can restore Canada's standing around the world, and before we can be a credible voice in international affairs for the better, we have to restore Canada's democracy.
Great. I'll kind of finish here perhaps with one more kind of economic question. Since I just remembered it's April 1st, our carbon taxes went up yet again. Where do you stand on carbon taxes and pricing in the future?
So I oppose the carbon tax. Today's increased, I think, the price of a liter of gas by about 2.2 cents to a total of 11 cents per liter, just vis-a-vis carbon. And look, I'm on record. I do not believe that taxing Sally at the gas pump or making everything more expensive by virtue of the carbon tax will do anything for global temperatures. And so it's regretful at a time when life in Canada is already unaffordable, and especially with the price appreciation, the price inflation that we're seeing in the last couple of years as a result of us overprinting money and a result of the jolting in the market resulting from lockdowns and then reopening of the economy, that we would further burden the consumer with what I believe to be effectively a virtue signaling measure.
Great. So just in kind of wrapping up, it's going to be a long campaign. It's going all the way till September 10th there. It's quite the marathon. Can we look forward to you coming out west at sometime soon?
Absolutely. I anticipate being in Manitoba over the next couple of weeks. I then believe I have a trip to Saskatchewan. And also we are just in the process of finalizing a trip to Alberta literally in the next 2 weeks. And I'm looking forward to having conversations all around the country. I think that we are in a very, I would say that we are in a very challenging time for Canada's democracy. I think that without democracy, we don't have anything. And it's not just democracy that's being eroded, it's Canada's opportunity. If I may take a moment, I'm an immigrant to Canada. I came here when I was 15, and I had every opportunity to work, to succeed, to join a small business, to be elected from the very electoral district that welcomed me as an immigrant. And I don't think that many Canadians feel the same optimism that I felt about our freedoms and economic opportunity.
Okay, well, that's excellent. I do appreciate you putting yourself out there. We got such a wide range of candidates this time around. It makes it hard, but the more we can talk to it and I'm a free market person, and it comes to that with democracy. The more we get in there, I like to think that the best will get in the end. So where can people find more information about yourself and your campaign, Mr. Baber?
Well, our website is just being finalized, but I do see the temporary homepage at www.joinroman.ca. That's joinroman.ca. But of course, folks cannot give us their vote unless they register to vote with the Conservative Party of Canada, and they can do that at our portal at joinroman.ca/now.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming in to join us today, Mr. Baber. And I hope we'll get the chance to talk again soon as the campaign continues to flesh out and develop.
Thank you. And I again apologize for being slightly late.
It's better late than never. All cool. All right, so that was Roman Baber, one of the, again, I'd say one of those, there's so many candidates, but certainly one of the better known ones. He was out of the gates early in this race for the Conservative leadership in Canada, and definitely I'd say the most outspoken, with a good history when it comes to vaccine mandates, individual rights when it comes to those, and of course the lockdowns and such. And it cost him his role, but he stood on principle in the legislature in Ontario. And now he's taking it further. So it'll be very interesting to see how that campaign develops and see how he goes. So that wraps it up for this week, guys. And as I was just wrapping earlier, just to remind everybody, I do have Cory on Monday. He was a former member of Parliament, and he's going to be talking about this race more in a general sort of way. And I am going to have Mike Baker, who was a VP of the Police Association in Calgary Union, and again, talking about just the abuse and attacking that we've been getting against the police forces in Calgary. It's just beyond the pale. So thank you all for joining me today. I'm glad you guys who hung in there to catch Mr. Baber. He ran a little late, but we got him just under the wire there. And have a good weekend. I will see you all on Monday.